Have you ever wondered what it's like to live in a place where nothing works without a bribe? Where hospitals won't treat you without an extra fee? Where police officers are the first to break the law? And where public money disappears like magic? Welcome to the darkest side of our planet. Today we'll dive into countries where corruption isn't just a problem. It's practically the official system. These are places where public officials don't work. They charge. Where government contracts aren't won. They're bought. And where power isn't exercised, it's exploited. What you're about to see goes beyond political scandals or misappropriation of funds. It's a window into entire societies shaped by systemic corruption, where millions struggle to survive while small elite lives like royalty. Get ready to discover the 10 most corrupt countries in the world. Some of these stories are so absurd they seem like fiction, but unfortunately, they're the harsh reality. 10th place, Burundi. We begin our journey in Central Africa with Burundi, a small country that carries deep scars from one of the bloodiest conflicts in recent history. Burundi, along with Rwanda, was the scene of a brutal genocide in the 90s, when rivalry between Hutu and Tutsi tribes exploded into extreme violence. With just over 27,000 square kilometers and 12 million inhabitants squeezed into this small territory, the pressure on resources is intense. Although no longer in open war, Burundi suffers from brutal political repression. Journalists who expose corruption mysteriously disappear. In a country where the average monthly salary is only $30, public officials drive luxury cars and own mansions. International aid that should relieve people's suffering often ends up in the pockets of the powerful, creating a cycle where poverty feeds corruption, which in turn deepens misery. 9th place, Equatorial Guinea. Next is Equatorial Guinea, Africa's smallest mainland country, and the only one where Spanish is the official language. With just 28,000 square kilometers and 1.4 million inhabitants, this tiny country hides a shocking contradiction. Equatorial Guinea has enormous oil reserves that should make it one of Africa's most prosperous nations. Its GDP per capita is one of the highest on the continent. However, the reality on the streets tells a very different story. Oil wealth benefits only a small circle around President Teodoro Obiang, in power since 1979, over 40 years. His son, Teodoro Obiang, became famous for his extravagance, a collection of luxury cars worth millions, mansions in France, and even a Michael Jackson glove encrusted with diamonds. Meanwhile, more than 70% of the population lives below the poverty line, with an average salary of approximately $200 monthly. Opposition is silenced, the press is controlled, and corruption isn't just a problem. It's the very system of government. 8th place, Haiti. Crossing the Atlantic, we arrive at Haiti, the world's first independent black republic and a country with a history as rich as it is tragic. In 2010, a devastating earthquake killed more than 200,000 people. After 15 years of UN peacekeepers' presence, the mission concluded in 2019. But the departure of peacekeeping forces didn't bring stability. The country plunged into violence where armed gangs control entire neighborhoods of the capital. Corruption in Haiti takes brutal forms. The Petro-Caribe Fund, created with Venezuelan money for development, saw billions simply evaporate. Meanwhile, hospitals function without medicine. Schools have no chairs, and roads remain impassable. The average salary in Haiti is just $100 monthly, with a basic food basket costing $80. Fuel shortages, chronic hunger, and insecurity create an environment where corruption isn't just tempting, it's a survival mechanism. 7th place, North Korea. From Caribbean poverty, we travel to the extreme isolation of East Asia. Welcome to North Korea, the world's most closed country. Governed by the Kim dynasty since 1948, North Korea operates under a system that mixes communism, personality cult, and extreme militarism. Corruption works differently here. The state is so dominant that the line between government and corruption has simply disappeared. While the party elite enjoys imported luxuries in Pyongyang, most of the 25 million inhabitants live in conditions of extreme poverty, with over 40% suffering from chronic malnutrition. Workers in state companies earn the equivalent of $2 to $5 per month, while the Kim family commands a network of shell companies that move billions to finance their luxurious lifestyle and military programs. More than corrupt, The regime has transformed corruption itself into a system of government. Sixth place, Libya. We return to Africa to explore a country that was once prosperous but is now plunged into chaos. Libya. For decades, Libya was ruled by the eccentric Muammar Gaddafi, who used vast oil reserves to create a peculiar state. Gaddafi maintained his power for 42 years, using oil money to buy loyalties from various Libyan tribes. Everything changed in 2011 when the Arab Spring reached Libya. With NATO support, rebels overthrew Gaddafi. But what should have been the beginning of a democratic era became an even worse nightmare. Today, Libya is divided between rival governments and armed militias. There is no unified state, only territories controlled by different factions, all fighting for control of oil. In this civil war environment, corruption reaches stratospheric levels. Military commanders sell weapons meant to protect civilians. Human trafficking flourishes, with migrants being exploited on their way to Europe. In a country where oil should guarantee prosperity, corruption has transformed natural wealth into a curse. Fifth place, Yemen. We arrive at Yemen, a country that for centuries was an important commercial center, but now faces the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Since 2014, Yemen has been plunged into a civil war that has transformed into an international conflict, with Saudi Arabia and Iran supporting opposite sides. Amid the chaos, corruption has flourished in unimaginable ways. Humanitarian aid intended for starving civilians is diverted and sold on the black market. Fuel is smuggled and sold at exorbitant prices. Public employees often need to pay bribes just to receive their own salaries. The average monthly salary, when paid, is approximately $100, while a basic food basket costs $150. More than 80% of the population needs humanitarian assistance. Amid such desperation, corruption isn't just an administrative problem. It's a death sentence. Fourth place, Venezuela. We arrive at Venezuela, a country that was once one of the richest in South America, and today faces one of the worst economic crises in modern history. Blessed with the world's largest oil reserve, Venezuela has plunged into a spiral of hyperinflation, scarcity, and political repression that has destroyed its economy. Schemes like the state-owned PDVSA diverted billions, while the distorted official exchange rate allowed people connected to the regime to get rich overnight. The result is surreal. The bolivar is devalued so much that people use banknotes to make crafts. The official minimum wage is equivalent to $5 monthly, while a basic food basket costs $100. Venezuela has the highest homicide rate in South America, while the collapse of the healthcare system has caused eradicated diseases to resurface. More than 6 million Venezuelans have fled in the largest migration crisis in the Americas. In a country where everything is for sale, from passports to judicial decisions, corruption has become the system itself. Third place, South Sudan. We reached the world's youngest country and one of the most corrupt, South Sudan. Born in 2011 after decades of war with Sudan, independence was supposed to bring peace and prosperity. The country has oil reserves and fertile lands that could ensure its development. However, just 2 years after creation, South Sudan plunged into its own civil war, with ethnic divisions between Dinka and newer groups being exploited by leaders hungry for power. The result, 400,000 dead and millions displaced. Billions of dollars in oil revenues simply disappeared from public coffers. Leaders accumulated fortunes, buying mansions in Kenya and Uganda while their people starved. The average monthly salary is approximately $60, while a basic food basket costs $100. More than 80% of the population lives below the poverty line. In such a young country, corruption is destroying the dream of independence before it can even materialize. Second place, Syria. From the youngest country, we moved to one of the oldest civilizations, now devastated by a decade of brutal war, Syria. Since 2011, when peaceful protests against the Assad regime were suppressed, Syria has plunged into a war that has become the most complex conflict of the 21st century. The Syrian war is a kaleidoscope of factions, government, moderate rebels, Islamic extremists, Kurds, each supported by different foreign powers. In this chaotic scenario, corruption has taken terrible forms. Military checkpoints extort desperate civilians. Humanitarian aid is diverted. Release of political prisoners is negotiated through exorbitant payments. One of the most corrupt aspects is the government's reconciliation system, where besieged communities are forced to surrender after years of bombardment. The average monthly salary is approximately $25, while a basic food basket costs $50. With nearly 400,000 dead and more than half the population displaced, Syria shows how conflicts create environments where corruption thrives at the expense of human suffering. First place, Somalia. Finally, we reach the country that occupies the top, or rather, the bottom, of our ranking. Somalia, considered by many the world's most failed state. Since the fall of dictator Syed Barre in 1991, Somalia hasn't had an effective central government. For decades, rival clans, warlords, and the extremist group Al-Shabaab have fought for control of the territory. Piracy along the Somali coast became the best-known symbol of anarchy in the country. At its peak, between 2008 and 2012, Somali pirates captured dozens of ships and demanded millions in ransom. In a country where the concept of state practically doesn't exist, corruption takes unique forms. Officials of a ghost government receive salaries from international aid. NGOs are forced to pay protection fees. Up to 70% of international funds intended for reconstruction never reach their destination. The average income is estimated at about $40 monthly, while a basic food basket costs $60. Somalia represents the most extreme example of how corruption, combined with prolonged conflict, can destroy the very foundations of society. After this journey through the most corrupt corners of the planet, is there any hope? Surprisingly, yes. Even in the most unlikely places, there are brave people fighting against the tide of corruption. Journalists who risk their lives to expose scandals. Activists who organize communities. Young people who use technology to create systems that bypass corrupt structures. In Somalia, young people use blockchain to create alternative financial systems. In South Sudan, women have formed cooperatives that manage their own resources. In Venezuela, organizations document corruption cases. In Syria, communities have established councils to distribute resources fairly. History shows that even the most corrupt systems eventually fall. Dictators who seemed invincible, like Gaddafi in Libya, were eventually overthrown. And countries that were once among the most corrupt, like Georgia or Rwanda, have managed to make significant progress. The fight against corruption is long and difficult, but not impossible. And as long as there are people willing to risk everything for a better future, there will always be hope, even in the most unlikely places. As Margaret Mead said, "Never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has."